Oh no, it's this. Here we go. Awesome. Hi guys, welcome back. Um, this is fun. I feel like. Oh no, I guess we did Beyond Eyes at the end of in December, and we got to talk about that game quite a bit. But you have so many questions. uh, which is awesome. I love that. We're not going to get to them all, but that's okay. We'll play this game for a little while. Okay, okay, let's just start off with dragons. Would this game be better with dragons and giant sudokus? And then the follow-up, do you think that Charlotte might be a dragon and that the incident that was blacked out was that she accidentally burned down the building? Okay. There are questions in here. I doubt that Charlotte is a dragon, although I only suspect that that's her. Hey, babe, in the box, thank you. I only suspect that that's her in the painting that was smudged out. I don't actually know what she looks like, and so it's possible that her appearance might be surprising. Nobody has specifically referenced that, so who knows? She also, I mean, it is entirely possible that that building burned down. It seemed like, something happened and everybody inside was killed. I don't have a great sense of time, right? Like, again, this is not a problem with the game. This is in the sense that the game is problematic. This is a problem contained within the game. This is a problem that is being presented to me as a player by the game, to keep track and to understand the relationship between when things happen. So I don't know when the factory fire occurred. I got the sense that it was before they built the house on the island, but maybe that's not true. If it is, then that seems like it was before Charlotte's time. Charlotte should be contemporary. She was the sister of or the cousin of both Clara and Wade, I think. I forget exactly if that's true, but I think she was Wade's cousin. She's approximately the same age as them, is the impression that I have. So it seems like that happened before her, but on the other hand, I don't have a great sense of time, so maybe it's entirely possible that she could have been involved in whatever happened to the factory. I don't think that she flew overhead and breathed hi, hello, flames into it and trapped all of the workers inside and slaughtered them, just because that doesn't seem to be sort of the style of the Nancy Drew games. Would the game be better with giant sudokus? I don't know that there aren't. I don't know that there aren't giant sudokus. In Shadow at the Water's Edge, there was a very clear progression through these types of mini-game puzzles that were the sudokus and nonograms, where they were, kind of set apart from the narrative of the game, but they were introduced in specific locations and in a progression. There were easy ones and then intermediate ones, and then the giant Sudoku comes at the climax of the game at the end. That is the challenge that all of that stuff has been working towards. So far, we haven't seen anything that is that kind of set apart from the narrative, side puzzle sort of thing, mini game. that doesn't mean that they don't exist. From my extremely limited experience with Nancy Drew, I would guess that that is sort of part of how the Nancy Drew games are structured. And so I would sort of expect there to be some kind of puzzle element that will be introduced in this game. But I haven't seen it yet. So there might be giant sudokus. At this moment in time, I'm kind of expecting there to be. Dragons, I really liked, I posted this to Twitter. Somebody on YouTube who responded to the dragon question, talking about how dragons are an archetype, or can be interpreted as an archetype for a monster that a challenge, an obstacle that breaks the rules that have been previously set. You can't kill them with normal weapons. You have to have special weapons, or only certain people can kill them, that kind of thing. So thinking about, like, what would this game be better with an obstacle, if it included an obstacle, some kind of a challenge that was understandably different from everything else in the world, from what had been set up, that broke the rules that the game had set. That's a tough one. This is a hard question to answer. This is always a hard question to answer so early in the game. Right now we're still establishing what those rules are. I don't have a sense of like what the pattern of the game is. And so to answer that question from the perspective of like, could there be or should there be something that breaks that pattern at an important moment? Well, it wouldn't break the pattern until the pattern had been well established, right? That's a dragon then is a third act sort of an element to introduce. So from that perspective, it's really hard to answer that question right now. From the perspective of the fun one that we've done before, if I were tasked to introduce a dragon into this story, how would I do it? That's also kind of difficult because I feel like we just haven't gotten through enough. We don't have enough building material. Jetlag, I really like what you did from where we are, like given what we know of Charlotte so far. Oh shit, we did see Charlotte. She's the one in the red dress. Not a dragon. Not a dragon. So sorry. That doesn't work. That doesn't fly for me. Unless she's got like a spirit human, right? Like some kind of she's the opposite of an animagus, where her spiritual form takes the shape of a human woman, but in life she was a dragon. I mean, again, like this breaks pretty severely from the sort of very contemporary realistic fiction that Nancy Drew like is built on. I have no doubt that we can incorporate a dragon into this story, into this game somewhere. But I don't have a great sense of it yet. I mean, I guess right now what I'd have to go to is there's, it's haunted. This is a haunted house full of terrible, vengeful spirits. We got this sense that, like, if spirits don't complete their tasks within a limited time, then they become inhuman. The dragon, I would say, at this moment, would manifest as, like, one of those incorporeal, malevolent forces. We've already had a couple of visions, and so, like, there could certainly be a dragon vision that happens that everything sort of builds up to. But then presumably there's going to be an explanation for these visions. Or if not like a, concrete explanation, at least something that makes them a little bit more plausible from the point of view of Nancy, who is a skeptic and presumably will remain a skeptic at the end of the game. Okay. Why do you think Nancy Drew franchise in particular was worth revisiting on Play-by-Play among other game series that you played on Mostly Walking? So I don't know that I won't like I don't have a hard rule against revisiting stuff from Mostly Walking. And in fact, I would say that Heroine's Quest was an attempt at that, because that is so closely related to Quest for Glory, which we did play on Mostly Walking. That said, I mean, obviously this is the first one that I've done, or, that aside, this is the first one. And I don't have specific designs on any others. The Nancy Drew franchise I find particularly fascinating, and I think is a particularly interesting fit for this community. For several reasons. One of them is that, like I said at the beginning, it's underrepresented in mainstream game press, and I think that we have time to have that conversation. But I would love to have a conversation about why that is. Is it just because the target audience is women, or are there other things that we can sort of pull out of the way that the game is made, the way that the game is marketed, the relationship between the game franchise or the developer and other members of that ecosystem, either the press or prominent members of the gaming public? I mean, it's worth thinking about what makes this series more, I think, from my perspective, than other game series get sort of, not get the recognition that it would seem to deserve from its critical acclaim, from the review scores, from the sort of popularity among fans. Now, that said, maybe it's none of those things. Maybe it's just a marketing spend issue. And if we look at a game like what was the one that had the terrible ending, the sort of like sci-fi cyberpunk multiple identities hard noir adventure game that we played on Mostly Walking? I forget what it was called, but that's an indie game that has I think a lot of critical acclaim. Gemini Rue, yes, that's right. It's I think that is a well-liked game. I think that it has fans. I think that it has gotten it. It doesn't have no presence in the gaming press, but neither does Nancy Drew. But I don't think there were like a ton of stories about it. I don't remember people talking about it, especially. It's so like, is that a comparable example? Could we look at the Nancy Drew games and Gemini Rue and say that they're both relatively small? I don't think of Nancy Drew as being independent, but it depends on how you define that word. It's a small team. In a lot of ways, I think it's a comparable production to something like Gemini Rue. And neither one of them has a big marketing spend. And is that really the thing that defines or that constrains their mainstream popularity? I just have questions at this point, but that's something that I'm really interested in. I think that's not a conversation that Mostly Walking was especially interested in having, but I think that this community would be really interested in having it. Nancy Drew is a game franchise that I really wanted to give a second shot. I felt like it did a lot of things that were neat. And I think overall our impression of it on Mostly Walking was rough. And some of that had to do with the format of the show, and some of that had to do with how old the game was. And there were just a lot of factors that went into that. And talking to people who love these games, it was clear to me that our experience playing that game, it was highs and lows, but overall it wasn't representative of the experience that a lot of people have playing these games. And so I wanted to, it seemed worthwhile to me to try another one, and one that might be a little bit more representative of that experience. And then the fact that in the community, we have a lot of people who have a relationship to these games. We have a lot of fans, a lot of people who have played more than one Nancy Drew game. I think probably a lot of people who have played most of them. I don't know about a lot, but we have some people, and people who, it seemed to me would be interested in talking about them. And then obviously we have a developer. We have somebody who has some inside information and insight into the production process, and that seemed like it would be super valuable to me to have that be part of the conversation. So there's just a lot of reasons that I felt like it was worth playing another Nancy Drew game, especially in this community. I feel like those are mostly like, there's a lot of specific reasons. There's not anything that separates Nancy Drew from the other game franchises that we've played that makes me say, oh yes, Nancy Drew, that's the game. But except for those specific things. So I don't know. I don't know that's all I got. Do you get frustrated with adventure games the way that I do, where I just want to cut through all the red tape and badger the characters until they tell me what I want to know? That's an interesting question. That's a great question. So, I've expressed that I'm a little bit frustrated with, I think, a similar thing where the game is placing what I feel are arbitrary constraints on how I can access and organize information. It seems like, holy cow, there's got to be a family tree around here somewhere, right? Like, there's just got to be a piece of paper that has the names of everybody and all of their relationships, and that would make it so much easier for me to keep track of who all of these guys are. And the fact that the game doesn't just up front give me that feels artificial. It feels like that it'd be so easy for me to have that. And I think what you're identifying is a similar artificial feeling constraint of I only have, in this game, I have several topics that I can talk to characters about, like in, Siberia. But in a lot of adventure games, you don't even have that. You have, you have a talk button. I grew up obviously on Sierra games, and so that's how I think of it. I guess there were some Sierra games where you had dialogue options. But I would say that actually Nancy Drew has a more extensive dialogue system and more dialogue options and more forthcoming characters than a lot of adventure games do. And so that often feels like a very arbitrary, artificial constraint. That honestly doesn't bother me as much most of the time. Even in Nancy Drew, where I feel like a lot of the game, the gaminess of it revolves around trying to get information out of people who are not being completely honest with you. But I think because I recognize that as sort of core to the game, this is what the game is. The game for me is, trying to find the right combination of events that will give me the way that I can approach a topic with a person that will sort of unlock those secrets. And so I don't find that frustrating. Like I am totally okay with Nancy Drew not having the ability to just like slap somebody across the face and say, be straight with me. What the fuck are you talking about? That's, there are games maybe where that would be more appropriate, or having that option would be more appropriate. Playing as Nancy Drew, that doesn't seem like something that I expect or want or need. I feel like she does a good job. The game does a good job as it's written of having her express skepticism or try to get information out of people. That's a lot of what the game is. And yeah, there's some artificial constraint around the questions that you can ask. Certainly not like every conceivable question is represented on that list, but I feel like I can approach conversation in this game in a very gamey kind of a way. And so that doesn't bother me. Whereas some of the other information management stuff tends to bother me more. Is it true that you have a questionable past? In the sense that people ask questions about my past. And it is possible to ask questions about my past. I do have a questionable past. Yeah, that's true. That's totally true. Nancy Drew seems to sort of have a soft sciences, like literature and history, real or imagined, as its backbone. What would a game for girls with STEM basis look like? Oh, God. Okay, so, I mean, there's a couple things here. One is, I don't know that I 100% agree with you. There was, if not a lot of hard math, then certainly a lot of, soft math in Shadow of the Water's Edge. And maybe not in the Sudoku. Sudoku isn't really a math puzzle. But the nonograms, or some of the, I forget actually what nonogram was, but some of the other puzzles, were not just numbers as symbols. They actually used properties of numbers in significant ways. And that's, that's playing with math. That's definitely STEM. This game, there's been a lot of family history and a little bit of actual, American history. But the most interesting book, the standout book to me, has been the one about how to make batteries out of things in your home. And that's actually, that stood out to me not just as an interesting read, and something that seemed like it was important for the game, but also those were literally science experiments that I could do right now with stuff in my kitchen. I could take a break from I could pause the game and go make a potato battery now. It just taught me how to do that, and it also did a pretty good job of explaining, at a very high level, at a very simplistic level, some of the science behind it. So I don't know that I agree that that these games aren't STEM based games. I think that they make an effort to be pretty holistic, and they're not exclusively STEM, but I think they include STEM, and I think that they integrate it really well, given the kinds of puzzles and the kinds of the way that the games approach education in general. Sergari, I saw sort of fly by on the chat. The intention with these games, and it's clear to me that this is the intention, is for them to include educational content, to sort of fold it into the game where it's appropriate, not to be edutainment titles, not to be games that are explicitly about teaching things, but to have some of that educational content in them. And I think they do a fantastic job of that. And part of that is that they present opportunities to learn, and they present hooks. They present sort of interesting things that, first of all, if I don't care about science, then I only need to pay as much attention to that battery making book as I need to solve the puzzle, and know that I do something with oranges to charge the battery, to charge the cell phone, which I'm still pretty sure that's what I'm going to do. But if I am intrigued by that, then there's a bunch of shit that I can do. If I'm intrigued by the idea of women as spies in the Civil War, like if I didn't have you guys to do my bidding for me, and if I wasn't like literally on stream, I totally would have paused the game at that point and gone to Wikipedia to see like, is all of this stuff true? Is this like real? What else can you tell me about that? Because that was awesome. I don't know that I would actually, I'm going to go build a potato battery, but I could see, you know, if I was, like 11, and I was playing this game and I had literally nothing to do on a Saturday, because when you're 11, sometimes that's what happens, that this could totally inspire me to do that. Like that, it's got these great hooks for kids to go off and learn about the stuff that it introduces you to. And I think that's fantastic. If you want to make a game for girls with STEM content, I mean, I think you got to think, you need to really specify what you mean by that. Is this, what are the learning objectives of the game? STEM is actually huge, right? I mean, like STEM is such a broad category, and there's a ton of stuff that it excludes, and it's easy to think about it in terms of the stuff that it excludes. It's, you know, it's not history. It's not all of the humanities content. It's not literature. It's not poetry. It's not music. It's not art. But what it actually contains, I mean, science, technology, all of technology, engineering, and math. Math is a huge subject. I mean, we break it down like by grade, but that's a huge amount of content. So if you're thinking, I mean, like there's all kinds of games with explicit learning goals in various STEM fields. Some of them are terrible. Some of them are good. And the ones that are sort of easier to be good are the ones that are focused on like systems thinking. I mean, in any educational game, you are going to be a lot better off if you're dealing with learning objectives. If you're trying to get people like explicitly, this is a game about learning, which again, Nancy Drew isn't. And Nancy Drew kind of gets around this by not being a game explicitly about learning. It is. I really, really like how it integrates learning content into it itself, but it's not. That's not what its focus is. So if you're creating a game that is focused on STEM education, then on any kind of education, games are not good at teaching facts. They're not good at teaching the kind of content that you would find in a textbook. They're worse than textbooks at teaching that kind of content. They're really good at teaching about systems and relationships, dynamics, those kinds of things. And in STEM, you can find those things in various places. You can make a game easily about statistics, especially if you make it like practical. If you look at the games that are out there, like redistricting. Is that what it's called? Redistricting? Something like that. The games about gerrymandering are fantastic, and they're really games about statistics. And politics, I guess, but in a very like engineering focused way. Games that are about programming at a high level. I fucking love Lightbot. Lightbot's one of my favorite games, and that's a game about programming. Games about things like ecosystems. A lot of like SimCity is a lot about urban planning and the which isn't necessarily STEM, but it is also about sort of the operation of that system. It's a lot about systems thinking, right? Systems thinking as a category, that is the kind of thing that you can teach with a game because it is a dynamic rather than like a set of facts. There's some great astronomy games that are, about how planets or orbital bodies behave. Like those are all, any of those systems, anything where you have a system that you can model, you can totally make a game out of that teaches content. And then if you want to make a STEM game that is targeted at girls, I mean, honestly, there's lots of ways that you can approach that problem. I think the thing that Nancy Drew does that makes it a game for girls is just that it's got some fucking representation in it. I mean, it's about a female protagonist who deals with a number of characters that include women and deals with them, on a level playing field. And there are so many games that are out there that, we love that utterly fail to do that. And I think the number one thing that you need to do to make a game that's going to appeal to girls is just don't fucking alienate girls. I mean, that's the big number one. And it's not that hard to do. So that's my take. Like, I think that if you want to make a game for girls, then it's totally doable. You don't have to like stretch yourself unbelievably to do that. I think you can. I think you can do like demographic research. You can do market research and find franchise intellectual property that is popular among the demographic that you're targeting. You can skin things like that. That's fine. Like you can do all of that stuff. But I think, the number one thing is just make it accessible. Make it so that they don't feel lousy. It doesn't make them feel lousy to play. Okay. What do you think is the role of tasks, quest objectives? Should they always be a summary of things you've already learned, or should they add clarity to objectives beyond focusing the player on the tasks or actual objectives? A good example of the latter is a Skyrim quest where a general tells you, see what's up with so-and-so, and the quest task comes up as kill so-and-so. All right, well, I mean, this is a very, I feel like this is a question that is very context specific. I don't remember the Skyrim quest system at all. So I don't remember what that interface looks like and how it's presented. I feel like that is a hilarious and clever example of using a quest system to provide commentary or to create another level of communication between the game and the player. That's really cool. I would enjoy that moment where the general, of course I enjoy this moment all of the time when, the subtitles are different from the text. You guys should play, because I'm probably not going to do it for you, Quest for Glory 4, which is probably the best Quest for Glory game, but it is not necessarily easy to jump in at that point. So it's I don't know. It's hard to recommend Quest for Glory games. So this was one of the first CD-ROM games that Sierra produced. One of the first voice-acted games. I don't know if that's really true, but it is the first voice-acted Quest for Glory game. It was of that era where that was a newish thing. There's a beautiful, beautiful sequence that comes like where you go to a tavern and you talk to these three farmers who are sitting at the table drinking. And it's a repeated gag where every time you talk to them, and actually I think I played it relatively recently and it's not nearly as funny to me now as it was when I was 9. But the gag is these guys they're just like shooting the shit. They're just talking and they'll talk about various topics and they all have these distinct personalities and frequently their voice actors will say things that are different than what is written in the subtitles, than what is presented to you as the actual script. It is presented in a way where it's easy for the player to read it as the voice actors are just like improvising sections of this, and sometimes they turn things that aren't jokes into jokes, and sometimes they just are. It is all an attempt at humor. And I think that humor is not as sophisticated as I remember it in my head being, in the same way that the Transformers cartoon is fucking terrible. If you guys like gone back and watched that, I don't know how many of you are as old as I am and like had Transformers toys as a kid and don't associate, like my first association for the Transformers is not Michael Bay. Those TV shows are like nonsensical crap, but I loved them when I was 6. I think in the same way, like I found this the absolute height of sophisticated humor when I was 11 or 9 or whatever, and it's not. But you can sort of see like what it was that I recognized, that you can play with different modes of communication between the game and the player. And when this is irony, right? Like this is classic literary irony, dramatic irony, when the object, the play, the book, the movie, the game communicates two different things with you along two different channels, and you as an audience member have some additional insight based on the fact that you can recognize two different messages and you can contextualize them based on the channels that they came from. Dramatic irony is sort of when you know from one character that something is happening, and then another character expresses that they believe something different or they expect something different, and you as the audience member know that they are wrong. You know that something that a character expresses is incorrect, and often that is humorous, right? Often that will be played for humor. The character will say something that, because you know that they are wrong, because of what you know that they don't know, because of what has been communicated to you via another channel, is actually, it's funny. It's not just wrong, it's funny. That's marvelous. What the fuck was this question about that I got on this tangent? Oh yeah, kill so-and-so. Yeah. So that, I love that. I love that example. Has nothing to do with what in general should a quest objectives like journal be. I think it depends on the game, and at like 100%. And a big like open world game like Skyrim or Mass Effect, like the journal is there so that you can keep track of all of the different errands that people have sent you on. And I think its role in Nancy Drew is slightly different. It's helping you keep track of, first of all, What are the things that I can do that I haven't done yet? Which is really important because the game throws a lot of stuff at you. In the same way that a big open world RPG does. It throws a lot of stuff at you. In this case, it's throwing a lot of, I don't want to call them clues necessarily, but like avenues of investigation. Unlike an RPG, unlike, Skyrim, where the things the game throws at you are like side quests, and they tend to be unrelated, and it's overwhelming because there's just such a volume of them. Nancy Drew, like, these are all important things. I'm going to have to do all of this stuff, not necessarily in like sequence, but I'm going to have to do it all in order to solve the mystery that I'm going to eventually be asked to solve. Which maybe isn't necessarily where is Jessalyn, Jamelyn, whatever her name is. It may or may not be that. That may or may not end up being what the central mystery is. But I'm going to have to like do all of this stuff, investigate, follow all of these avenues of investigation in order to gather all of the clues that I need to solve whatever the mystery ends up being. And so having a checklist of like, don't forget, here's stuff that you're supposed to do, or here's stuff that you can do. I think that's really important. But the other thing that a game like Nancy Drew is doing with this interface that Skyrim isn't really, is helping you keep track of where all of these clues are pointed. In the same way that there's not an interface to help me keep track of who all of the characters are, who all of the family members are, but that is clearly something that I have to do. I have to pick out like which of them are important, which ones do I remember, how do I remember what their relationships are. That is a microcosm for what the whole game is. The whole game, it's a mystery game. The whole point of the game is keeping track of all of the clues that I get that are seemingly disparate, seemingly unrelated, remembering them all, building a model in my head by which I can relate all of them to each other. And I think that the journal in this game serves at least some purpose in helping me do that, helping the player to keep that model organized. I feel like that's a slightly different purpose than what you're doing in a game like Skyrim. So, I think a journal or quest objectives, that is a design pattern. That's a lexical unit in interactive media. That's something that we as a community, if you're a gamer, if you've played enough games to have a basic literacy of games, that's something that's familiar to you. It's a form, it's a structure that it's an element that when you see it in the interface, you understand what it does, what its purpose is. But actually what it does, like what its specific purpose is, I think changes from game to game. And it's something that game designers can use because it's relatable, because players already know how to relate to it, already know essentially what it is. And so you can take that and you can use it to solve a whole class of problems that aren't necessarily all the same problem, but all sort of can be categorized together as this could be solved with a quest log. That's sort of my take, I guess. There are lots of those kinds of structures that you might take for granted as a player because you don't have to consciously recognize them, but you do recognize them. Like, you have built up a literacy of these game structures, common game structures, of tropes. And if you're a designer, then it's important that you sort of be more conscious of what those are so that you know where it's appropriate to use them, and when you're using them, and when it might be appropriate to subvert those tropes, or when it might be there might be something that's more appropriate to use, or when it might just be like clumsy to use the trope that you are using. You have to have a better sense of that. Okay. Let's save some of these questions for next time. It seems like there's so many questions. You guys are fantastic. I love this. You're wonderful. I'm gonna pretty much call it. Thanks, guys. This has been great. I'm glad to be back to doing this. It's fun. I'm excited about this game. I'm really enjoying it so far. Can't wait for next week. I should be back playing this game again. Same time, same day. Wednesdays at 8 Pacific, which is slightly earlier, and maybe that'll be helpful to some of you. All right. Happy New Year, everybody. Have a great week. I'll see you around.